Hi, everyone. It's Lin Bouthillier from linbouthillier.com. I'm a certified trauma recovery coach. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of my ongoing series entitled Monogamous at 13. This is my series where I speak about trauma, traumatic experience, events, circumstances, conditions, environments, and situations. All of these things, which can be moderately traumatic or highly traumatic, they still leave an indelible mark on us. They leave an after effect within us. And what happens is when we have the perspective of two different views from one person, it can help clarify some things, and we can begin to have more understandings and recognitions of what we have had happen to us and what we've experienced. And then it comes a little bit more into clear focus of what we can do about it. So a person who's a trauma survivor and a trauma professional has the dual perspective to help you to put together some of the pieces of your story so that you can have clarity and help you to make your healing and going forward plan, how you make your own recovery and how you support yourself through it and reach out for the help and support of other people who are on your side and want you to succeed at this. So today's episode is special episode number 141. And this is about patriarchs and controlling men in your family. Now, there might be a little bit of discomfort speaking about this the way there always can be if we're in our trauma recovery work. We're listening to someone's trauma, someone giving a presentation about trauma. We need to be anchored and grounded so that we don't experience being triggered into what? A 4F response, an autonomic nervous system response of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, or into dissociation, or into a really strong emotional flashback or emotional response. All of these things can be eased and prevented by using grounding techniques, mindfulness techniques and practices, and a grounding tool. So I have a grounding stone in my hand. It's not my favorite one. I mentioned in special episode number 140 that my little holy stone is gone. I accidentally left it in a hospital room yesterday, and I don't have it anymore. And so now I have a new grounding tool in my hand, and eventually this one will feel just as good as the old one did. So when we're speaking about patriarchs and controlling men in a family system, some of you may feel, oh, and before I forget, there is a trigger warning on this video. This is right now a trigger warning for in case you start to have that feeling that you're feeling that floaty or I'm getting really upset feeling. Shut off the video, please. Go into your highest, best self-care and leave the video for other people if it's not for you. All right, so I'll get back into what I was speaking about. Patriarch is a person in a family. We can have a matriarch or a patriarch or both in a family. And that is a person who has either a perceived or an assumed role by themselves or other people in the family or both, where they have power and control over other people, and they are the final word in the decision making. That is generally what we mean by matriarch and patriarch in a family. So what I have here is an AI overview of some things that we can do to help ourselves deal with patriarchy in a family. Now, before I get into that list, I'm just going to share with you a little bit from my experience. I married a person who had one sibling, and it was a male sibling. And from the time we were dating until till my partner's male parent passed away, there was always an understanding that it wasn't spoken out loud. It was just an understanding. Everybody knew it. That if you're going to do something, if it doesn't pass muster with the patriarch, you're going to be considered to be defiant, uncooperative, and difficult. And the word no is never supposed to be spoken in that person's direction. And if they want something, they don't have to arrange it with you. They're just going to do it. and they believe they have a right to do it, and no one has ever opposed that. But some people will take on the role of patriarch as soon as their parent passes away. Women in a family system, once the grandmother or the great grandmother has passed away, it's almost like a silent handing of the baton to the next person who's going to hold that role. And in many families, it is the eldest woman family member. Same thing with the men. It can be the eldest male family member who is now the patriarch who's in control. My spouse came from a family system where there could be one of each. And in our situation, one was my spouse's mother and the other one was my spouse's father. But today I'm only, and they can sort of peacefully coexist as matriarch and patriarch in a family for certain. But what that means is any living generations under them, they're in charge. They get the final say in everything. And so in some families, there might be a sort of a legacy where each generation has at least one person who goes to the college or university that patriarch supports, attended, and still has affiliations with or not. In their mind, might be their only affiliations with it anymore, but they might have a requirement that someone from this family carries on my legacy at that college where one of my offspring or my offspring's offspring or my child's grandchild is going to go there. Why? Because I say so. Because that's part of me and I'm highly narcissistic and it must still go on in my family. And I will harass and pressure and hound anybody that isn't listening and doing what I say until they do what I say. And so there can be, with patriarchy and with matriarchy, there can be coercive control where one person in the family says, if you don't get your kid enrolled in the school, you get them applying in now, do all the prep work. Your kid has to have a certain grade point average all through high school. They have to have been in so many different extracurricular activities. They have to join civic organizations while they're in high school. They have to be in, junior league and all different stuff. And so when they are ready to go to college, that these Ivy League schools are going to swoop them up and bring them in, and then I'm going to have the continuation of what I want for my family. It's my choice. I made the decision. I'm so important that this has to carry on and carry on and carry on. Well, what happens is that it can put enormous pressure on other people in the family to be able to produce what that person expects of you. And that can be a form of relationship trauma, intergenerational trauma, environmental trauma, because you're now in an environment all the time where the only thing matters is that you produce excellence so that somebody else, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 generations up from me, can go to their grave knowing that they controlled their family and steered them and funneled them and pushed them into the things that they want. So for some of these people, it can be an educational background. For some of them, it can be a religious background. For some of them, it can be belonging to and being president of community organizations that nothing less than president of that organization will ever do. That you will be a disappointment if you don't end up on the executive board for your town. Or it might be that you need to be on an executive board for a prestigious church in the city that is closest to my family. I had a former family member who said, we don't go to just any church. We belong to the cathedral in the city. That's our home church. And it's very, very hard to get membership in that church. They don't just take anyone, and you have to be a prestigious family in order to have a leadership role in that church. And our families had that for generations and we're never letting go of it. Well, that can be based on a matriarchy or a patriarchy that requires that from everyone. And then the whole family, every single child born into that family is trained up in the knowledge that that is the most important aspiration for the entire family, is we control the executive board at this place, or we sit on the advisory board or the board of executives for a certain thing, like a theater. It's an excellent example. A theater in your town that has you know, these world renowned shows that, you know, such as Disney's Lion King, or Grease, or you know, whatever kind of stage production they happen to have coming in. This is a thing where people who are matriarchs and patriarchs can find that they can have some control, and it's prestige for them, and they want to have what Dr. Roberta Shaler used to refer to as, they want to have power, status, and control. Okay, power, status, and control. Dr. Susan Forward says that they use that in her written books. Okay, they use fog, fear, obligation, and guilt to control other people, not just matriarchs and patriarchs, but all controlling people. And if you have a matriarch or patriarch in your family, they're absolutely looking for power, status, and control at all times, as Dr. Shaler stated beautifully for us, and as Dr. Susan Forward, PhD, also stated, they control us using fear, obligation, and guilt. And so when we have these dynamics coming together, we can live a life that is just absolutely not feeling good. So the simplest way I can put it, we don't feel good. We feel usurped. You realize that you may have entered into a living arrangement with someone that was very, very dear and precious and special to you, and you have a committed relationship with them. And then as soon as you're in that family, where they have introduced you to the parents and the grandparents and the aunts and uncles and siblings and cousins and everybody, you just have been totally brought into this family system. And then gradually, very, very gradually, like one drop at a time, you may begin to be exposed to the concept that, yeah, we can't do that because this person doesn't allow it. We can't go there because this person would never allow it. We can't buy that because this person would never allow it. We can't, one that I experienced is having the discussion with my spouse early in our relationship at this time, not knowing that I was trauma bonded, not recognizing that I was in an abuse situation. I actually thought, if we can't, because we've been trying for almost a year to conceive a baby. And my discussion with my spouse was, you know what, there are plenty of children who are awaiting adoption, not necessarily infants. And I would be very, very open to the idea of adopting a refugee child, a child who was orphaned in a war. And at the time when this was happening, there were certain parts of the world where we were seeing it on the news every day, more and more children going into care because of losing both parents because of a conflict on the ground. And these were very, very publicized world news event conflicts that we were seeing every day. And I said, you know what, I think if it doesn't work out for us to be able to conceive our own child, we should look into that. It might be something really, really, really a beautiful experience to raise an adopted child. And the first thing that I got back was pushback, saying that is never going to fly in this family. And our family is absolutely never going to accept a child of color as one of their grandchildren. It will not happen. I was shocked and horrified to hear that that's what my spouse is saying right out loud to me. It will not happen. They will never allow this to happen. Who's they? The matriarch and the patriarch, the people who have coercive control over the entire family system. And I was told, let go of that idea right now. It is never going to get off the ground. It's not going to happen. Nope, it will not happen. And see here, I was at that time innocent enough, open-minded, and a little bit, naive enough. Nothing wrong with being open-minded, nothing wrong with being naive, but I couldn't see the way they really were yet. And this person was telling me that's how they are, and you should accept that right now. That is how they are, and they will do anything in the world to stop that. They will never, ever, ever, ever allow that. Well, how would he know that so clearly? Because he was raised by them. I had no idea what the personal, private, when nobody else is in the house, conversations happen between these parents and their children about such things as a child being adopted into a family, or a child from a different nation being adopted into a family in the United States, or a child who came from a different part of the world with a completely different cultural background being brought into a white suburban American family, and how forbidden that could be. This person had no idea. Now, some of you might be saying, well, what were you doing letting them dictate to you? I can tell you that this isn't just something that lightly happens and we respond to it and everything is set straight. This is decades of programming that go in, programming that goes into children and adolescents and young adults is extremely ingrained programming. And children can be highly suggestible, as we all know, and they can be exposed to certain concepts and prejudices and limitations and all kinds of things in that area, in that realm, in that direction. And it will shape what they do in the future based on this inherent knowing that the matriarch or the patriarch or both will never tolerate it, and that you will be cut off. And we hear so many stories of people in the world who were cut out of a will. They were cut off from the family. The family did an emotional cutoff because they would not come along with the coercive control that was being held over them. Well, I can tell you from my own experience, there were things about the show Everybody Loves Raymond that were starting to make me wonder, when that show was a new TV show and we're watching it each week, not in reruns, but seeing a real new video, a new episode of the show. And I started to wonder, are the writers for this show somehow listening and watching my life? Because I can't believe how much this stuff parallels with what I am experiencing. I know it's kind of an off the wall, absurd thought, but you start to think, how could they possibly know all of this stuff? And I was very, very innocent and naive, and I had no idea that there are people in the world who are just like me, who are everywhere, and they're experiencing the same type of control and interference that we were seeing Frank Barone play out as the patriarch in this family. And so that person's opinion over and over again is the opinion that matters. I would be told, I was told by my spouse, if we're planning on a vacation, don't talk about it to them. We'll let them know just before we go, like literally maybe a week or days before we go. Because if they find out that we're going on a vacation, my father, who never took his children on a vacation other than the ones that were the whole group family renting cabins together and staying at a place It's all orchestrated by the patriarch that they were dealing with at that time, which was her father, my husband's mother's father. And every family member was expected to be at this week-long thing where they went to they went up to Canada, and they stayed on a lake, and they rented boats, and they went fishing, and they stayed in cottages, and everybody was there having fun together. There was no such thing as an individual vacation. You wouldn't dare go on an individual, just your spouse and your children vacation. Don't even think about it. We plan when the vacation is. We'll let you know what date we're going, and we'll let you know what time of day we're leaving, and what day check-in is, what time check-in is, and what time check-out is, and what activities are going to be done there, where we're going to dine if we go out to dinner, or what we're going to bring with us in coolers to cook and to serve on this trip. Everything was orchestrated by a couple people that they perceived themselves to be in charge. And the family never questioned this. So that was the only type of vacation. Well, what happened when that patriarch passed away? The vacations stopped. So my husband, when that person died, when that patriarch in the family on the mother's side passed away, there were no more trips. No more. Because it was already ingrained in them, programmed in. This is the only way you can take a trip. And you cannot take your children to Disney World. When Disney World opened, it was made very clear to them. I was told this. Don't even think about taking your kids there. It's a ripoff. It's too much money. How dare you spend money on a lavish trip like that? You can't spend money and go to that. You would be wrecking your own finances, and we're not going to bail you out if you can't make your bills. So don't even let me hear about you planning to take your kids to Disney World. That is not going to happen. And my spouse remembered their family saying, nope, responsible people do not do that. And we don't even really want you taking a vacation. If you're given the choice between taking a vacation and then the other option is still continuing to work and just having that vacation pay given to you instead of the time off, take the pay. That would be you being responsible and pleasing me, showing me how responsible you are. Just keeping that nose to the grindstone, keep on working. If there's a choice between take time off with pay or no time off with pay, you take the no time off with pay and just keep on going. Because you need to prove to me that you're a hard worker. And I don't want to see any of my kids being lazy. I don't want to see any of my kids being idle. And I don't want you taking a vacation at all unless it's my idea and I plan it and I control it. So there was a very, very, very clear message to the family from the patriarch when I was experiencing the patriarch in my marital family. And the message was, sometimes it would be this. I decided that we're painting your house. Me and you are going to paint your house. And you need to schedule some time off because I figure it should take us 3-4 days around there. And you're going to schedule time off. And I want you to buy the paint and have it ready, have all the tools ready, because I'm going to be coming over to your house and starting this with you on this Saturday. So we'll have Saturday and Sunday and then a couple days off that you've taken off work. So plan it. That's what we're doing. And what did my spouse say? Okay. And I said, you know what? You're a second shift worker. We have small kids. I do not want to be up at the crack of dawn when you get off work at midnight. And your system's used to getting up usually around 10 a.m. Please make sure your father understands that this is not going to start until at least 11 a.m. each day because you're a second shift worker. And so I was there. He called him up and he said, I'm not going to be starting working until 11 a.m. Dad, remember, I'm a second shift work guy. My days are upside down from yours. And you're retired now, and I'm not. And I don't get up at the crack of dawn, even to paint my house. I'm staying on my regular schedule. And the dad said, okay. And just like in the show, Everybody Loves Raymond, I sat right up when I saw that and went, oh my gosh, I've experienced that. Where they're in bed and they can hear a sound, and it's the patriarch, Frank Barone, on the ladder painting the house. Well, I woke up to the sound of music playing, and it sounded like it was right near my head. And the window of our bedroom was right next to the headboard on my side. And I heard music. It was about 6:30 in the morning. And that's when I realized he's right on the other side of the bed where, I was right on the other side of the wall where our bed is. He's on a ladder and he's scraping paint and listening to his radio. Didn't even let us know that he was there. And we had specifically asked, could we please do this on our schedule? Because my husband said, I don't want to break my body's system of being on this schedule. And to the patriarch, they might say, okay, sure, that they don't mean it. What's really going on is I'll do as I damn well please, and you will tolerate it without complaint. So that summer, our house got painted, not because we wanted to, but because that person said, you are doing this, you are going to burn a couple vacation days for this, and you don't have any control over this. I do. What he said to me was, and this is my father-in-law, he said, I've decided that your shutters are going to be painted light blue. So make sure you pick out a nice shade of light blue when you go to the store. And I said, I'm not having light blue shutters. And he said, well, there's a house across the street that has them, and it looks really beautiful on a white house. And I've decided that you're going to have light blue shutters because also it's my favorite color. And I pushed back on it and said, I will decide with my spouse what color shutters our house will have. And he could not tolerate that I made a boundary and said, if it's our house and we're paying for the paint, we are choosing what color goes on the house for the walls, for the exterior walls, or the shutters, or the trim, all of that. We decide. You offered to come and help us paint. Actually, he didn't offer. He told us, he demanded that we're going to paint and that he's in charge of the job. And when we pushed back and said, gently pushed back and said, no, we appreciate that you volunteered to help with the job. There wasn't even a job to volunteer with because he decided. We didn't have an upcoming painting of our house going on. He just decided our house needed it, and that was what we were going to do. But in a family with a patriarch, you do not have the option. They don't want you to believe or ever think for 1 second that you have the option to say, you know what, that plan that you've made is not going to work for us. And we will let you know if we decide to paint our house. And if we decide to hire a painting company to paint our house, then that's our decision, and you don't get to derail it. But with a patriarch, the minute you say, so sorry, but you are not in charge of my affairs. You are not in charge of my home. You are not in charge of my children. You are not in charge of our financial decisions. You are not in charge of what vehicle we purchase. You are not in charge of what appliances we purchase. You are not in charge of whether or not we take a vacation. You are not in charge of what religion our children are. You are not in charge of whether or not we attend a church, which one. You are not in charge of who we see socially. You are not in charge of whether or not we show up at something that you're invited to and we're invited to. You're not in charge of whether or not we accept with a yes or a no. We are. We're grown-ups. And your influence over your children ended when you were no longer having them as dependent children inside your home. But the patriarch cannot see it that way. They cannot see it that way. The only thing they can see is, I produced you, meaning their offspring. It's either I produced you, I adopted you, I raised you, I took care of you. And so often, I mean, this individual in particular loved to use this expression. It's very demeaning and shaming expression, but you feed them, you clothe them, you send them to school. And what do you get back from them? Ingratitude. Non-gratitude. You feed them, you clothe them, you send them to school. What do? They stab you in the back. That means you said no. It just means you said no. No, thank you. I will not be doing this. I will not be going on that trip. I will not be staying home from my vacation that I've already paid for because you think it's lazy of me to take time off work and go to a Disney theme park. When we were taking a trip to a Disney theme park with our children, we were told that is just absolutely wasteful. What is wrong with you? This is just not a good, it's not a good idea. And I think you're being really careless with your money. Another thing that happened is, like when you were ready to purchase a home, when that person, the patriarch, wants total control over your financial decisions and your property decisions, your investment decisions, they will make it extremely clear to you. Don't even think about going to look at a home, a potential home that you're going to buy, unless you notify me and I come along. Not only did he come along, but he insisted on driving. So here's my husband sitting in the front seat. I'm sitting in the back seat, and I'm feeling like I am being treated like a child. I'm not even supposed to have a say at all because he thinks that this decision is between, patriarch and his son. Doesn't see a woman as having any rights in the situation whatsoever. And we went through the house, and the house was just as clean and spotless and free of wear and tear that a house can show with, many, many years of existence. The house was built in the late 1950s, and it had knotty pine interior, and it was just like showroom new. It was just beautifully, beautifully taken care of. And it had the cleanest basement I have ever seen. And all of the things like, the furnace and the hot water tank and all that stuff was updated, everything. The roof was new. It was a really great house at a really great price. And he just, well, as soon as we came outside, he looked at it with us. We came outside and he said, nope, you're not buying this house. And of course, my question, why? Why can't we buy this house? Was not welcome. He said, get in the car. And when we got in the car, my husband, sitting in the front seat, said, Dad, I love this house. Lynn loves it too. Why are you saying we can't buy this house? And he said, I just don't like where it's located. It's too far towards the city. Meaning, it's not close enough to my house that I can pop in on you all the time with no notice to control you. It's too far away. I don't like the neighborhood and it's too far into this, it wasn't in the city proper, but it was just on the outskirts of the city. And he just was putting his foot down and saying, no, you are not buying this house. And so we were on the way back to his home where his wife was. And she thought that we were going to be letting the realtor know that day, we're putting in an offer on this house. It wasn't our first time seeing it. It was the second time seeing it. We did go have a peek at it without him present. But then when we went in with the realtor to talk about possibly putting a deposit on the house, making an offer. And he came with us and said, you're not putting an offer on anything unless I've gone in that house and seen it. He was not paying for the house. We were. Even if he was paying for the house, he still has no decision on whether or not, if it's our house and we're paying the mortgage on it, he has no business telling us whether or not we can purchase the house. And so when my husband asked him in the car, why are you saying that we can't buy this house, Dad? And he said, it is not the right one. It's too close to the city. And I just don't like the location. And my spouse gave absolutely no pushback on it because he's been conditioned and trauma bonded through his whole life to these people who are highly controlling and coercive as a person can get, highly narcissistic, and noticeable total lack of remorse and total lack of empathy, and no ability to check themselves in most situations. And so when we got back to their family home and we got out of the car, we walked in the garage and then we come in through the kitchen door. And what does he say? He comes in first and we're walking behind him. And he says to his wife, I got a couple of disappointed kids here. I hate to tell you, we got a couple of really disappointed kids. And on the inside, I was screaming, who the fuck do you think you are to come in here with this authoritative tone? You got a couple really disappointed kids here, meaning I did something to them and they're unhappy about it, but we're not going to tolerate that. We're going to shut them out if they show any negativity towards my decision at all. Any pushback at all, he was giving her the message. We are united on this. It's a no. And if they have any pushback, or if they go ahead and do it anyways, there's going to be very serious consequences for disappointing the patriarch, for saying no, or for making a boundary, or for expressing any autonomy. So they lay down, and he used to refer to it as, hey, I'm laying down the law. I am laying down the law, was the expression he used over and over and over and over again to his married son and his daughter-in-law. And he did it to his other married son a couple of times, didn't get away with it because that person had a whole lot of blowback for if he tried to do that to him. And his wife was the same. So they did attempt doing that. And what ended up happening is they would go to Europe, they'd go on a trip, and they might even tell you when they've gotten back. And they might not say anything about it coming up. And just, oh, have you heard from them? Nope. Where do you think they are? I've been calling and calling, leaving messages, and I'm like, I don't know. And then they get back from wherever they went and say, oh, yeah, we were in California for a week. And one time I heard my sister-in-law say, and all the times that you called me, my house phone calls were rerouted to my cell phone, and you were calling and calling and calling and calling while we were on our trip, and I did not answer you. She didn't mind pushing back and having healthy boundaries and stating that I don't have to explain to you if I'm going anywhere. If I'm paying for my trip, I'm a grown person. I'm not checking with you. I'm not asking your permission, and I'm not telling you first before I go if I don't feel like it. So patriarchy and matriarchy are extremely difficult things for a person who is married into a family or having a cohabitating relationship with their partner, and that family structure has one or more people in it who perceive themselves to be in charge of all decisions, and that there are no boundaries anywhere. It's just total enmeshment of everybody. It makes me think of those slushy machines that used to be in the lobbies of some discount stores. Back in the day, they used to have these machines that were in the lobby, and there'd be somebody behind it. They'd have one of those hot dog roller machines, and you could get nachos or things like that. But it was a refreshment stand that was in the lobby of a big discount department store. And now they have those things inside of convenience stores, but they used to be, before there were convenience stores all over the place, they used to be in the big box department stores. And it reminds me of those slushy machines where you can just see it just churning and churning and churning and churning. And that's what it reminds me of when I look at one of those families like that, like what the family system that I was in, that I married into, where there is just constant churning of everything. And there are no defined boundaries for anyone anywhere except for the two people at the top. And in my case, there were two. In many cases, there's only one. And so I hope that this has helped you. This discussion has helped you to clarify, yeah, when you're dealing with a matriarch or a patriarch or both in a family, they usurp your autonomy. They do not allow your autonomy, or they limit it. They do not tolerate any healthy boundaries at all. They do not tolerate independence at all. They want total enmeshment and total visibility of everything you do. And they want total ability to rewrite what is going on in your day, what's going on in your calendar year, what is your social schedule like, what is your work schedule like, where are you working, what are you doing, what kind of job are you in, what is your education, how many kids you have, whether or not you have children at all. If they don't have control over these things, they will coerce you into control by using whatever means necessary. Manipulation, exploitation, invalidation, shaming, minimization, threats, every kind of coercion, financial, yanking the financial support away from you if you are receiving financial support. They might pressure you to quit your career and go into something that they like better. They might say that after you've been practicing at your chosen profession for a few years, after you've gotten, let's say, for instance, a nursing degree, and you're working in that capacity as a registered nurse in a health system, they might come to you and say, I think what you're doing is a bunch of nonsense, and I want you enrolled in a school. I think that you should be enrolled by this fall. And I think that you need to get out of nursing. And I think that you might want to get into law. Or they might say, I want you to work in the auto industry. And I want you to go in and work there a couple of years and become a supervisor in a plant, and hopefully a plant manager at some point in time. But I think you're more suited to that kind of work. And I don't like this nonsense of you being a nurse. They will choose words like that to state that your chosen profession is nonsense. Or they would say, I don't really like this getup. I don't really like this thing that you do. This career that you chose. It just doesn't suit you. And I think that you should listen to me. And we're just gonna restructure your whole life. It is absolutely intolerable. What does that do to us over a period of time? It erodes our ability to have control over our emotions. It can make us feel emotional dysregulation, and that is because it enlarges the amygdala in our brain. We have an amygdala in either side of our temporal lobe, and it's deep in our limbic system, and it is in charge of responding emotionally to whatever external stimuli we are experiencing. And so what we can have sometimes is what's called an abreaction, where something happens and we will respond to it in a much more intense way than what is actually necessary for that type of experience. But it's not the trauma survivor's fault. It's the changes to our brain. These are called the neurobiological changes to our brain that make it so that it is harder for us now to have an emotional response that actually is a match to how much external stimuli is happening to us. So if somebody does something that's absolutely intolerable, once I have been exposed to that so many times that I now have the changes in the structures of my brain, and that my brain has less ability to regulate my emotions appropriately, then I'm going to start to have these really big reactions to when they do it more. And some people blame the abused for their emotional responses, and then they will shame and humiliate you for having, oh my gosh, you're so out of control all the time. What is wrong with you? And we can say, there's nothing wrong with me. My brain is responding exactly the way a brain responds to when somebody does the things like what you do. That you're stepping on my boundaries, you're crushing my boundaries, you're crushing my autonomy, and you're trying to write my life. You're holding the pen and writing my life. You want to be the author of my experience. Just like Dr. Shaler used to say, they want to be the author of your pain. They want to be the author of your life. They want to be the author of the schedule of your life, the order in which you do things, or whether or not you do things, such as going to college, getting married, having a child, purchasing a home, switching careers, taking a vacation, planning for your retirement, maintaining your home and your yard, where your children will be educated, what your children's names are. When I was pregnant with my first child, I got told by the matriarch, your child's name is Peter. I've named your baby already. And I said, no, you didn't. You only think you did. Can you imagine the blowback that I got from saying that to the matriarch of the family? No, you didn't name my baby. You only think you did. That is not happening. Baby's father and I will choose our child's name, and it is not open for public debate. And she said back to me, the baby's name is Peter, and that's what will appear on the birth certificate. And I said, and you're entitled to think that. So I had to make sure that these people could not, I said, do not come into the hospital when I'm giving birth, and do not come to visit. You will see me and the baby after we get home. What do you think happened? Of course they crushed that boundary. Of course they came in. Of course she said to me, how is my little baby doing? And she's letting me know it's not my baby, it's her baby. That's the matriarch that has extreme narcissism. And I can't prove this, but I strongly believe this. Any human being who takes that much control over any lives and events in the family system, if you're a matriarch or a patriarch, it is my belief and my opinion that you cannot be a matriarch or a patriarch without having some degree of narcissistic control. It's all based in narcissism. Otherwise, you'd just be the grandma or the grandpa. Nobody would be talking about matriarch and patriarch. Those terms imply control. And so when we pause a little bit to recognize who is holding the power and control in my family system, it's a really good thing to think about, because it gives us a little bit firmer grip on the reins for our own life. It empowers us to recognize, no, I'm the author of my experience, not them. I'm the person who decides what's best for me. We are the people who decide I am and if you're a single parent, I decide what's best for my child, not somebody else. Not relinquishing my role in my own life to someone else. It's been a really good discussion. I hope it helped you to get some clarity. about matriarchs and patriarchs. We do a whole lot better when we understand a little bit more. And that's the whole point of this video. So thank you, B, for being here with me. If you like my channel, if you find value here, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Put comments in the comment section. And any questions that you have, I absolutely love to read the comments, and I love to respond to all of them. And while my channel is still a small channel, I still get to do that. I'll worry about it when it gets bigger, and I might not be able to handle as many comments per day, but that would mean that I'm reaching more trauma and abuse survivors if my channel grows to the size where I can't respond to all the comments. But this will always be considered a safe space for trauma and abuse survivors. And I appreciate so much that you come here to spend time learning with me about the things that happen in our lives that can be abusive or traumatic, and what on earth we can do about them. So if you want to become a client for certified trauma recovery coaching, if you're having difficulty with a matriarch or patriarch in your family system and you're having trouble sorting it all out, give me a call. I would love to hear from you. And I would love to be your co-equal peer in trauma recovery and trauma support so that you can live the life that you want to live. Have the very best day, everyone. Oh, my contact information is at the description page for this video. My phone number is 716-994-3052, and you can find me at linbouthillier.com. My email is listed as lin@linbouthillier.com. All of that's in my website. You can find it there or in the description to this video. Have the very best day, everyone. Remember, self-care is never, ever selfish, and you are infinitely worthy of your own trauma recovery. Take care. Bye.